All rise.
All rise.
The Honorable Chief Justice and Associate
Justices of the Supreme
Court of Appeals of the state of North Carolina.
Yes, oh yes, oh yes. The Supreme Court of North
All
Carolina
of our citizens across the state depend upon us to uphold and protect both the spirit and the letter of the law, and to always apply the law fairly and impartially to every litigant who comes before this court.
God save the state and this honorable court.
Hello and welcome to All Things Judicial, a podcast of the North Carolina Judicial Branch. I'm Chris Mears with the Judicial Branch Communications Office. In this episode, we listen to a 2009 interview with former Supreme Court of North Carolina Associate Justice Harry C. Martin. Justice Martin has the distinction of serving as a judge on the North Carolina Superior Court, the North Carolina Court of Appeals, the Supreme Court of North Carolina, and the Cherokee Nation Supreme Court. In addition, Martin has the distinction of being appointed to the bench by 3 North Carolina governors, Terry Sanford, Dan Moore, and Jim Hunt. In the interview, Martin offers a glimpse into the history of the North Carolina Judicial Branch and gives time-tested advice to Superior Court judges and young lawyers who are just getting started in the legal profession. This interview was recorded as part of the Chief Justice's Commission on Professionalism's historical video series. The interview was conducted by Commission Executive Director Mel Wright, who was the first to speak in the interview.
And we're here in Asheville, North Carolina, and I'm honored today to be sitting with Justice Martin. And Justice Martin, I thank you for agreeing to be here to share a few thoughts with us today.
Well, I'm happy that I'm able to be here, and it's a delight to help and participate in what the Chief Justice and plural Chief Justices are doing in this professionalism project that you have.
Well, now, when you came to Asheville, as I understand it, you started your own practice. You were right out of law school.
Right.
Had not practiced for a while and had no experience. Tell us what it was like to start out on your own, in your own law office, because I think we're going to have a lot of young folks now coming out with the economy as it is today that maybe start their own firms or not going into practices. And did you have a mentor, and how did you make it on your own?
Well, I really didn't have a mentor as you think of it, but I made up my mind, and as I reflect on it, Uncle Julius may have suggested this to me, and I can't remember for sure, but one of the first things I did was I went to see every lawyer in Asheville. There weren't too many, but I went to see every one of them, introduced myself, said I'm here, I'm practicing law, and this is where my office is, telephone number, and if you have anything that you think I could help you with or do for one of your clients, you just let me know and I'll be right here. Well, it took a little while for that to begin to happen. First month I practiced law, I made $15. My rent was $30. I rented an office from Joe Huff, who's a lawyer there in Asheville, and his wife was his secretary, and she said that she would do my work, which wasn't anything for her to do, but she said she'd do my work without any cost. And that was a footnote to it also, because later on, when I was a Superior Court judge, the state finally found enough money so that the Superior Court judges could have a secretary. And so I got Ms. Huff to come and be the secretary for the judges. And she did. And then later on, when I was appointed by Governor Hunt to the Court of Appeals, she came in and told me, says, you can't go unless I go too. And so she went and she stayed with me up until about a year before I had to retire. She left about a year before I did and came back. But coming back to that practice, I would say that one of the most satisfactory things is to open your own office, and it's your own responsibility. Either you do it or you don't do it. And if you work at it and devote your time properly, you'll get business. And very often, in those early days, a lawyer would send somebody to me because he was too busy to attend to it. Well, the next time that guy needed a lawyer, he came to me. Right. And it just gradually grew. Also, fortunately, the Roosevelt administration had the foresight to know that a lot of veterans were going to be starting in business, so to speak, and would need help. So there was a program where I got $300 a month from the government for the first 18 months, I believe it was, might have been 16, that I practiced law. It was known as the Veterans Readjustment Allowance, kind of bridging you over from your income as a serviceman to your own income that you're earning yourself. If you were appointed to represent somebody in a capital case, and I was at least 3 times, the judge could pay you, and the state would pay up to $250 for representing somebody in a capital crime. Today, that's all changed.
Well, after working for a while in that firm, was the next step for you to go to the bench?
It was, insofar as my career was concerned. I did take another big step after I'd been practicing law for about 7 years. I got married. Mm-hmm. That's the longest contract I've ever been in. It's still going on. In 1960, Terry Sanford ran for governor, and he knew I wanted to be a judge. I really didn't think much about being a judge until I started practicing law. I sort of got the idea that's what I'd like to do. And
what did you learn as a Superior Court judge that you could share with us?
Well, a Superior Court judge, the most dangerous part is talking too much. Superior Court judge has to quickly learn not to say much, because you really don't need to. Somebody says objection, overruled. You don't have to say overruled, blah, 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 blah. Tell why you're overruled. Don't have to say that. You tell why you're overruling. Some appellate court may say, no, that's the wrong reason. He didn't overrule it for the right reason. So judges, Superior Court judge especially, has got to learn to say little and to listen a lot. People have asked me, I sat on all 3 courts, as to which one I thought was the most important. I told them I thought the Superior Court judge was the most important because he's all by himself. There might be another Superior Court judge in the courthouse that he could talk to, but that's be the only guy he could talk to about a problem he might have. Whereas Court of Appeals, you got a panel of 3, you got 2 other guys to help you. Supreme Court, you got 6 other people to either help you or confuse you.
Well, now, after the Superior Court judgeship, did you go to the Court of Appeals?
I did go to the Court of Appeals.
What year would that have been?
78.
Okay.
Yeah, 1978. I was appointed to judicial office by 3 different governors, Governor Sanford, Governor Moore, and Governor Hunt. And Governor Hunt made the same mistake twice. He appointed me twice to the court, to the Court of Appeals, and then to the Supreme Court. I enjoyed the Court of Appeals work, but I think I served just about the limit of what a fellow ought to have to do. I remember the last year I was on that court, I wrote 105 opinions.
For the Court of Appeals in 1 year?
In 1 year on the Court of Appeals. That's one about every 3 days, roughly. And when you throw in Saturdays and Sundays, that's a lot of work you're doing. Supreme Court, you might write 25 opinions in a year's time, something like that, maybe.
How long were you on the Court of Appeals?
4 years.
And how long were you on the Supreme Court?
10.
10 years.
Yeah.
All right.
And I mentioned to you earlier that I did not like the mandatory retirement, which the legislature had passed, saying if you got to be 72 years old, you were too old to be a judge. You look at the Supreme Court of the United States, you got one justice up there now, he's the same age I am, I believe he's 89, and he's still serving on the U.S. Supreme Court. There have been lots and lots of justices, and lots of them on the court here in Raleigh that are over 72 years of age. But the legislature, in their wisdom, decided that after you reach a certain age, you couldn't no longer be a judge. And I think a trial judge, he can't be a judge after he's 70, I believe it is. What the difference is, I'm not sure. They give these guys in Raleigh that they can stay for 2 more years, and the guy up here on the Superior Court can't do that.
Well, what year was it when you stepped down from the Supreme Court, approximately?
It was 1992. Yeah.
And after that, did you retire? Did you go home and stop any form of the practice of law?
Well, I was pretty much retired for about 6 months when I got a phone call from Principal Chief Jones at the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians telling me about the Cherokees closing out what they call the CFR court under the Code of Federal Regulations, which is actually a court run by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And everybody who worked in the court system was a federal employee. They were not employees of the tribe. It was a federal court, not a tribal court. They wanted to terminate that. So I talked with Chief Jones, and he convinced me to take that job, and I did. I told him that I couldn't move to Cherokee. He said, that's all right. And so I drove back and forth.
And what type of cases did you hear in that capacity with the...
Well, there were 3 of us on the Supreme Court. Myself, a Cherokee Indian who lived in Washington, D.C. She was a graduate of Duke University and Columbia Law School. Very bright young woman. The 3rd judge, he was from Macon County. I can't think of his name, but he was a white man, not an Indian. Unfortunately, in the view of the Cherokees, Congress has passed a statute and says that for any criminal offense tried by a tribal court, you cannot sentence him more than 1 year in prison. In practical way, somebody charged with a big drug felony, justice could not be served if he's convicted. So those cases, including murder cases, rapes, burglaries, all the heavy crimes, they go to the United States federal court sitting in Bryson City. The principal criminal jurisdiction of the Cherokee Tribal Court is about the same as a district court judge in the state system. Now, on the civil side, they have unlimited jurisdiction. They can try any kind of civil case.
Let me ask you this question, Justice Martin. You have had a wide range of experience with the practice of law and sole practice and a partnership and on all levels of the trial bench. What important aspect of professionalism do you think young lawyers need to be aware of as they start out practicing law?
Well, I think the important thing for a young lawyer is that you are a professional. You are not in a business to make a certain amount of profit. You do not have other people's money invested in your business, and you do not have other people pressuring you. You've got to make more money. The practice of law is a true profession, and the principal objective of the practice of law is to help people, not necessarily help businesses. You can help businesses, corporations, and the like, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the basic bedrock is to make life better for the people who look to you to help them achieve that. I remember an older lawyer telling me years ago, if you mind your office and if you do your work, you don't have to worry about making money. The money will come to you. That is not your goal. Your goal is to help the person, or more than one. The young lawyer has got to preserve also in doing his job. I guess there are lots and lots of lawyers that couldn't find the courthouse if you'd ask them where it is. And lots of them, if they know where it is, never go there to try a lawsuit. But those who do, those who go into that courtroom, should remember that there's a difference between a lawyer and a judge. And we must continue, although you may not have good feelings and a good personal respect for a certain person who happens to be a judge, the fact that he is a judge entitles him to you be courteous and treat him as if he were, in your mind, a good judge. And that will help him as well as help you.
You've been listening to All Things Judicial, a podcast from the North Carolina Judicial Branch. You can find out more about the Judicial Branch by visiting nccourts.gov. If you like our podcast, please share it with a friend and give it a 5-star rating and review. Your help is essential to sharing the important work of the Judicial Branch. I'm Chris Mears with the Judicial Branch Communications Office, and I'm reminding you to keep all things judicial. Thanks for listening.